You are born into wealth. Everything you could possibly want is at your reach. And somehow, that is exactly where the problem begins. Because the version of this life that everyone envies and the version that actually exists are two very different things. The pressure, the guard, the guilt, the loneliness. This video is about the psychological reality of that life. The parts money cannot fix and the outside world never sees. You are born into wealth. Or perhaps you grew up in it. Either way, your earliest memories look different from most. A house that felt endless. Staff who were always around. Holidays that other families saved years for were just something that happened in summer. And nobody had to tell you it was special. It was just life. Because you cannot miss what you have never been without. The mansion is just home. The name above the door is just your name. Everything around you is simply Tuesday. Years pass, you grow, and the world outside the gates slowly starts to come into focus. A classmate says something, a question gets asked that you don't quite know how to answer. And for the first time you realize, not everyone lives like this. That realization, quiet as it is where everything begins. As you grow older, you start to understand something. Your name is not just your name. It carries weight, history. A standard that existed long before you arrived and will exist long after you are gone. Nobody explains this to you. You just absorb it. In how your parents carry themselves. In the school you were sent to. In the conversations that stop being about your day and start being about your future. You are not allowed to fail. Because failure here is not just personal. It reflects on everything the name represents. And from the outside, from friends, from classmates, from anyone looking at your life, the expectation is different but equally heavy. Be happy. Be grateful. You have everything. So when something hurts, there is nowhere to put it. You can't take it to family. That would be weakness. You can't take it to friends. That would be ungrateful. So somewhere between those two expectations, the real version of you learns to go very quiet. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because there is nobody around you with the space to hear it. Growing up, your world was carefully monitored. Who you spent time with, who came to the house, who was allowed into your life. Your parents weren't being cruel. They were being careful, because they knew people get close to others for reasons that have nothing to do with genuine connection. So they told you, many times, in different ways. Be careful who you let in. Not everyone who smiles at you means it. And because you were a child, you absorbed it. And without realizing it, you began to build a wall. Why are they being this nice? What do they want? That question, once planted, never fully goes away. So your circle becomes small and very specific. The children of your parents' friends. Similar status. Similar guard. Not chosen by you. Inherited. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, you watch two strangers across a room who somehow found each other, who chose each other freely. No status, no agenda, and you feel something you don't have a word for, because all you ever wanted was someone who chose you. Not the name, not the access, just you. As you get older, you start meeting different kinds of people, and something becomes clear very quickly. The way you relate to money is not the way most people relate to money. For them, it is a goal. Something to work toward, something to plan around, to celebrate when it arrives and worry about when it doesn't. For you, it was just always there, like water from a tap. You never thought about it, never strategized around it, never celebrated having it. It was simply background, and sitting next to someone who is carefully counting what they spend, who talks about how to earn more, who measures their decisions against what they can and cannot afford. You realize you genuinely cannot relate. Not because you don't care, but because you have never had to. And then something heavier arrives. Because you didn't earn any of it. You just arrived into it. And watching people work hard for what you take for granted without meaning to, without choosing to, creates a guilt that quietly sits underneath everything. The guilt of having without ever having to chase. But with all of that being said, these are some of the most common psychological realities that come with being born into wealth. And the pros, they do outweigh the cons. You never have to worry about survival, about where the next meal comes from, about whether the lights will stay on. That specific anxiety, the one that keeps most people up at night, simply does not exist for you. The best education, the best opportunities, doors that open before you even knock, connections that take others decades to build, available to you from birth, the freedom to pursue what you love without financial pressure standing in the way, to take risks that others cannot afford to take, to fail and try again without it costing everything. A head start that most people spend their entire lives working toward. You simply arrived with. None of that is small. None of that should be dismissed. The weight is real. The psychology is real. But so is the privilege of a life where the foundations were already laid. That baby had no choice in where they landed. Neither did you. Neither did anyone. The circumstances we are born into are not our doing. What we do with them, that part is